Deep within NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen in absolute terror. The James Webb telescope data showed something that should be impossible. Gravitational lensing patterns that could only mean one thing. Our entire universe, every star, every galaxy, every life form existed within the event horizon of a massive black hole. The numbers didn't lie, though Sarah desperately wished they did. She ran the calculations again, her fingers trembling over the keyboard in the dimly lit basement office they'd relegated her to after her disgrace. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the redshift patterns, the gravitational wave signatures, everything aligned with her father's theoretical framework from 30 years ago. Dr. David Chen had died in a car accident when Sarah was 17, just weeks before he was supposed to present his black hole universe theory to the International Physics Consortium. The authorities claimed brake failure, but Sarah had always suspected otherwise. Her father had grown increasingly paranoid in his final months, hiding research papers and muttering about watchers who didn't want humanity to know the truth. Now she understood why. Sarah pulled up the classified files she'd inherited, documents the government didn't know she possessed. Her father's equations predicted exactly what she was seeing, a universe-scale black hole with an event horizon so massive that time dilation effects made everything inside appear normal to its inhabitants. But according to his calculations, these pocket universes were inherently unstable. The collapse had already begun. She cross-referenced the Webb data with her father's timeline predictions. The gravitational anomalies appearing at the cosmic web's edges indicated structural breakdown. 18 months, maybe 20 if they were lucky, before the entire universe collapsed into a singularity smaller than a grain of sand. Sarah spun around to find Dr. Marcus Webb, no relation to the telescope, standing in her doorway. The department head's smile looked forced, his eyes cold as they swept over her cluttered desk. "Just reviewing the latest deep field observations," Sarah said, casually minimizing the data windows. "Some interesting gravitational lensing patterns in Sector 7. "Interesting how?" Webb stepped closer, and Sarah caught the subtle bulge of something concealed beneath his jacket. "Since when did NASA administrators carry weapons?" "Nothing conclusive yet. Probably just instrumental artifacts." She forced herself to sound bored, dismissive. "You know how finicky the gravitational wave detectors can be." Webb's expression didn't change, but his hand drifted toward his jacket. "Perhaps you should call it a night. Security gets nervous about staff working alone after midnight." The threat was unmistakable. Sarah nodded, shutting down her terminal with practiced calm while her mind raced. How much did they know? How long had they been watching her? "Good idea. I'll finish reviewing these tomorrow." She gathered random papers from her desk, leaving the important ones locked in her drawer. "See you Monday." Webb stepped aside to let her pass, but Sarah felt his eyes tracking her every movement. In the hallway, she noticed two men in dark suits near the elevator, men who definitely weren't part of the usual night security crew. Sarah took the stairs instead, her heart hammering as she descended 6 flights. The parking garage felt like a tomb, shadows pooling between concrete pillars. Every footstep echoed, and she found herself glancing over her shoulder repeatedly. Her hands shook as she unlocked her car, and she nearly sobbed with relief when the engine started on the first try. Only when she reached the highway did she allow herself to process what had just happened. They knew. Somehow, despite all her precautions, someone was monitoring her research. The same someone who had probably killed her father to suppress this discovery. But why? What could possibly be worth covering up the end of everything? Unless... A new possibility struck her, one so terrible she had to pull over. What if the collapse wasn't inevitable? What if it could be triggered deliberately? A universe-sized weapon that could erase all evidence of whatever was outside their cosmic prison. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Stop digging or join your father." She stared at the message until the screen went dark, then made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to silence her, they were 3 years too late. Her father's death had already destroyed her career, her reputation, her life. But she still had one thing left to lose: the truth, and she'd be damned if she'd let them bury it with her. Sarah turned the car around and headed home, already planning her next move. The world deserved to know they were living on borrowed time, even if that knowledge came at the ultimate price. She had 18 months to expose the greatest conspiracy in human history. The clock was ticking, and time itself was running out. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold glass of her apartment window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. 3 months had passed since her disgrace at the European Southern Observatory, 3 months of rejection letters and closed doors. The academic world had a long memory when it came to what they called spectacular failures. Her phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Elena ignored it, just as she'd ignored the 17 previous calls from unknown numbers since yesterday. Journalists, probably, or maybe another well-meaning colleague offering sympathy she didn't want. The last thing she needed was another conversation about her promising career spoken in past tense. But the phone kept ringing. "Dr. Vasquez?" The voice was young, nervous. "This is Marcus Chen from the James Webb Space Telescope Operations Center. I need to speak with you about something urgent." Elena nearly hung up. The JWST team had been among the first to distance themselves from her after the incident. "I'm not interested in interviews or—" "We're seeing anomalies in the cosmic microwave background," Marcus interrupted, his words tumbling together. "Patterns that shouldn't exist. The data it's impossible." Something in his tone made Elena straighten. She'd heard that particular mixture of excitement and terror before. In her own voice, 3 months ago, when she'd first noticed the gravitational inconsistencies that had ultimately destroyed her reputation. "What kind of patterns? Can we meet? I can't discuss this over the phone. There are security concerns." Elena found herself agreeing to meet at a 24-hour diner in Arlington, though every rational part of her mind screamed that this was a mistake. She'd spent weeks trying to rebuild her life, taking a position at a small planetarium, teaching children about stars while her own research gathered dust. Getting involved in another impossible discovery was professional suicide. The diner reeked of stale coffee and fluorescent desperation. Marcus Chen looked even younger than he'd sounded on the phone, his NASA badge clipped to a wrinkled shirt, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. "Dr. Vasquez, I've read all your papers," he began, sliding a tablet across the scratched Formica table. "Your work on exotic matter distributions, the gravitational field equations. Before the ESO incident, you were the leading expert on large-scale cosmic structures." Were being the operative phrase. Elena glanced at the tablet screen, then froze. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the cosmic microwave background radiation, but the patterns were all wrong. Instead of the expected slight variations in temperature, the data showed intricate geometric structures, spiraling formations that seemed to pulse with mathematical precision. "When did you first notice this?" 4 days ago. We've run every diagnostic, checked every instrument, brought in teams to verify the data. It's real, Dr. Vasquez. The universe is showing us something we've never seen before." Elena's fingers traced the patterns on the screen. The formations reminded her of something, fluid dynamics, specifically the way matter behaved when approaching an event horizon. But that was impossible. They were looking at the cosmic microwave background, the echo of the Big Bang itself, not the environment around a black hole. Unless— "Have you shown this to anyone else?" Marcus shook his head. "That's the problem. Dr. Harrison wants to classify it as instrumental error and scrub the data. He says it's too disruptive, too dangerous to release without years of verification. But I know what I'm seeing. This isn't error, this is discovery." Elena understood Harrison's position. She'd been in similar situations before, faced with data that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. The difference was that this time, the implications weren't just academically controversial. They were terrifying. "You said there were security concerns? Someone's been monitoring our communications, phone calls, emails, even internal NASA networks. And yesterday, Dr. Sarah Kim from the MIT team was found dead in her office. They're calling it a heart attack, but she was 34 years old and in perfect health. She'd been working on similar anomalies in the gravitational wave data. A chill ran down Elena's spine. She'd dismissed the earlier phone calls as journalist harassment, but what if they'd been something else entirely? What if someone was already tracking anyone who might understand what this data really meant? Why come to me? I'm professionally radioactive, remember? Because you were right. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Those gravitational anomalies you detected at ESO, they weren't errors, were they? You found something that shouldn't exist, something that threatened everything we thought we knew about cosmology. Elena stared at the tablet, watching the impossible patterns shift and flow like living things. She'd spent 3 months convincing herself that she'd been wrong, that the universe was exactly what textbooks claimed it to be. But looking at Marcus's data, she felt that familiar mixture of wonder and dread returning. The truth was staring back at her from the screen, elegant and terrible and utterly undeniable. The universe was trying to tell them something. Dr. Elena Vasquez hadn't slept in 36 hours, but adrenaline coursed through her veins like liquid fire. The data she'd discovered in the James Webb archives wasn't just groundbreaking, it was universe-shattering, literally. She paced her cramped apartment, stepping over towers of physics journals and empty coffee cups. The encrypted files lay spread across 3 monitors, displaying impossible readings that challenged every fundamental law of cosmology. The cosmic microwave background radiation showed patterns that could only exist if their entire universe was contained within the event horizon of a supermassive black hole. Her phone buzzed for the 15th time in an hour. Dr. Marcus Chen again. She'd been avoiding his calls since fleeing the observatory, but Marcus had been her research partner before the scandal destroyed her career. If anyone deserved an explanation, it was him. Elena, thank God. Marcus's voice crackled through the speaker. Where are you? NASA's been calling non-stop. They want to know why you accessed classified Webb data. Marcus, I need you to listen very carefully, she said, closing her eyes. Everything we think we know about our universe is wrong. We're not expanding into infinite space. We're falling. Silence stretched between them before Marcus laughed nervously. Elena, you're scaring me. You sound like you did before I had my breakdown? Before I was discredited and blacklisted? Her voice hardened. This isn't about my mental state. This is about survival, she heard him sigh. Okay, I'm listening. Elena pulled up the spectral analysis on her center monitor. The redshift patterns in the deep field observations, they're not showing universal expansion, they're showing gravitational time dilation. We're witnessing the universe as it appears from inside an event horizon. That's impossible. The scale alone. Is it? We've always known black holes exist at every scale. Stellar mass, intermediate, supermassive. Why not ultramassive? Why not infinite mass? She could hear her own desperation creeping in. The math works, Marcus. I've run it 17 different ways. A car door slammed outside her window. Elena froze, peering through the blinds at the black sedan parked across the street. 2 figures in dark suits stood beside it, one speaking into a radio. Marcus, I have to go. Elena, wait. If what you're saying is true, what does it mean? What happens to us? She watched the suited figures approach her building. It means we're not alone in here, and something doesn't want us to know the truth. The line went dead. Elena grabbed her laptop bag and stuffed the portable drives inside. Her hands shook as she copied the most critical files to an encrypted cloud server, fingers flying across the keyboard. The building's main door opened 2 floors below. She could hear voices echoing up the stairwell. Her fire escape had been her emergency exit since graduate school when she'd lived in equally questionable neighborhoods. She climbed out onto the rusted metal platform, laptop bag slung across her shoulder. The autumn air bit at her exposed skin as she descended into the alley behind her building. Heavy footsteps thundered up the interior staircase. Elena dropped the final 6 feet to the ground and ran. She emerged onto the busy street 3 blocks away, finally allowing herself to breathe. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Vasquez, your research has attracted dangerous attention. If you want answers about what you've found, meet me at the Griffith Observatory Planetarium. Come alone. A friend." Elena's blood chilled. No one else knew about her discovery except Marcus, and he was still at the university. She checked her secure cloud storage. Someone had attempted to breach it 4 times in the last 10 minutes. A homeless man sitting against a storefront looked up at her with surprisingly sharp eyes. "Beautiful day for stargazing, isn't it, Doctor?" She backed away, bumping into a woman pushing a stroller. The woman smiled apologetically, but her eyes held the same unnatural focus. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. How many of them were there? She ducked into the nearest coffee shop and ordered a large black coffee with shaking hands. The barista, a pierced college student with blue hair, handed her the cup with a knowing smile. "Your research is very important, Dr. Vasquez. Some truths are worth dying for." Elena dropped the coffee, scalding liquid splashing across the floor. She ran for the back exit, pushing past confused customers. The alley behind the shop was empty except for dumpsters and delivery trucks. Her phone rang. Marcus again. "Elena, listen to me very carefully." His voice was different now, controlled and cold. "You need to return the data. People are getting nervous about what you might do with it." "Marcus? What's happening? Who got to you?" "No one got to me. I'm trying to save your life. The data you found, it's not the first time someone's made this discovery, but it's always been contained before it could cause panic." Elena felt reality shifting beneath her feet like quicksand. "How long have you known?" "Come to the observatory tonight. We'll explain everything." The line went dead, leaving Elena alone with the terrible certainty that nothing, absolutely nothing, was as it seemed. The secure conference room at the Institute for Advanced Cosmology felt more like a tribunal chamber than a scientific meeting space. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat at one end of the polished table, her laptop open before her, while 5 of the world's most prominent astrophysicists stared at her with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. "You're asking us to believe," Dr. Marcus Chen began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority, "that the James Webb telescope has somehow detected the event horizon of a black hole containing our entire universe?" Elena nodded, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. "Not somehow, Marcus. The data is irrefutable. The gravitational lensing patterns, the redshift anomalies, the quantum field fluctuations, they all point to the same impossible conclusion." Dr. Sarah Winters leaned forward, her grey hair catching the fluorescent light. "Elena, I've known you for 15 years. You were brilliant before your incident. But this sounds like the desperate theory of someone trying to reclaim lost credibility." The words stung, but Elena had expected them. Her reputation had been in ruins since the Montreal conference 2 years ago, where her preliminary findings about dark matter had been publicly demolished by peer review. She'd retreated from academic life, taking a minor consulting position that barely paid her bills, watching from the sidelines as younger scientists claimed discoveries that should have been hers. "Look at the data," Elena said, projecting her analysis onto the wall screen. "These aren't random observations. Webb has been detecting coherent patterns in the cosmic microwave background radiation that suggest we're observing the interior surface of a spherical boundary." Dr. James Robertson, the youngest member of the panel, squinted at the display. "Even if we accept your interpretation, which is a massive if, what you're proposing violates fundamental physics. Black holes don't work that way." "The holographic principle is theoretical at best," Dr. Chen interrupted. "You're building castles in the air, Elena. This is exactly the kind of unsubstantiated speculation that got you in trouble before." Elena felt her frustration building, but she forced herself to remain calm. She'd known this would be an uphill battle. "Then explain the temporal anomalies Webb detected last month. The light from the most distant galaxies isn't just redshifted, it's time-dilated in a way that's consistent with extreme gravitational fields. Dr. Winters exchanged glances with her colleagues. We've reviewed those findings. They're within the margin of error for instrumental calibration issues. Instrumental calibration? Elena's voice rose despite her efforts to control it. Sarah, I've triple-checked every calculation. The patterns are too consistent, too mathematically elegant to be equipment malfunction. We're seeing the universe as it actually is, not as we've assumed it to be. The room fell silent, except for the hum of ventilation systems. Elena could see the doubt in their faces, the same expression she'd encountered everywhere since Montreal. But underneath the skepticism, she detected something else: fear. Fear of the implications, fear of being wrong, fear of a reality that didn't conform to their carefully constructed models. Dr. Robertson cleared his throat. Let's say, hypothetically, that you're correct. What are the practical implications? How does this change anything? Elena had been waiting for this question. If our universe exists within a black hole, then everything we understand about its ultimate fate is wrong. The heat, death scenario, the big rip, cosmic inflation. None of it applies. Instead, we're dealing with Hawking radiation from the outside. Meaning? Meaning our universe has an expiration date. Black holes evaporate, and based on the mass calculations I've derived from Webb's data, we have approximately 47 billion years before the process becomes irreversible. The silence stretched longer this time. Dr. Chen was the first to speak. Even if we accept your timeline, which we don't, 47 billion years is longer than the universe has existed. This is hardly an immediate crisis. It's not about the timeline, Elena said, pulling up another dataset. It's about what else might be out there. If we're inside a black hole, then there's an entire reality beyond our cosmic horizon. And if advanced civilizations exist in that external universe, they might be capable of manipulating our containment field. Dr. Winters stood abruptly. Elena, you're venturing into pure science fiction now. We're scientists, not conspiracy theorists. Am I? Elena's voice hardened. 3 days ago, Webb detected gravitational wave patterns that don't originate from any known source within our observable universe. They're coming from outside, Sarah. Something is manipulating the boundary conditions of our reality. The room erupted in overlapping voices, but Elena wasn't listening anymore. She could see the decision in their faces, the institutional reflex to protect careers and reputations over truth. They would bury her findings, classify them as speculative research, and she would disappear back into academic obscurity. But the data wouldn't disappear with her. The universe had revealed its secret, and Elena was determined to make sure humanity heard it, regardless of the consequences. The fluorescent lights in the university basement hummed like dying insects as Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. 48 hours had passed since she'd first seen the impossible data, and she'd barely slept. Coffee cups formed a defensive perimeter around her workstation, their cold contents forgotten as she dove deeper into the mathematical rabbit hole that threatened to swallow everything she thought she knew about reality. The numbers didn't lie. They never did. But these numbers whispered secrets that made her skin crawl. "Still here, Chen?" Dr. Reginald Morse's voice cut through the electronic buzz. Maya looked up to find her former mentor standing in the doorway, his silver hair disheveled and his usually pristine lab coat wrinkled. The man who had once called her brilliant now looked at her with something approaching pity. "The data is real, Reggie." She gestured at the screens surrounding her workspace, each displaying different aspects of her analysis. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the gravitational wave signatures, the redshift patterns, they all point to the same impossible conclusion. Morse stepped closer, his eyes scanning the equations that covered her whiteboard like arcane incantations. "Maya, you're seeing patterns that aren't there. It's what the human brain does when it's under stress. We find meaning in chaos because the alternative is too frightening to accept." "Then explain this." She pulled up a 3-dimensional model that rotated slowly in the air between them, courtesy of the holographic display she'd jury-rigged from spare equipment. The image showed the observable universe, but instead of the familiar cosmic web of galaxies and dark matter, it revealed something that defied comprehension. This is what the universe looks like when you account for the quantum entanglement signatures in the Webb data. We're not looking at an expanding cosmos, Reggie. We're looking at the interior structure of an event horizon. The hologram pulsed with an eerie blue light, its surface undulating like water. At its center, countless points of light swirled in patterns that seemed almost organic, as if the universe itself were alive. Morse's face went pale. That can't be right. The math checks out. I've run it 1,000 times. Maya's voice cracked with exhaustion and something deeper, a fear that had been growing since she'd first glimpsed the truth. Every galaxy, every star, every particle of matter we've ever observed exists within the ergosphere of a black hole, so massive that its interior could contain entire universes. And if I'm right about the temporal dynamics, she trailed off, unable to voice the most terrifying implication of her discovery. If you're right about what, Maya? Time. Inside a black hole, time becomes space, and space becomes time. What we perceive as the 14-billion-year history of our universe might actually be happening in the span of microseconds in the outside reference frame. We could be living our entire cosmic history in the death throes of a collapsing star. The basement fell silent, except for the persistent hum of electronics. Morse lowered himself into a chair, his scientist's mind wrestling with implications that threatened the very foundations of human understanding. Even if you're correct, he said slowly, what could we possibly do with this information? If we're trapped inside a black hole, if our entire reality is just a brief quantum fluctuation in the collapse of space-time, then what's the point of... He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he stared at something over Maya's shoulder. She turned to see two figures in dark suits standing in the doorway, a woman with sharp features and cold eyes, and a man whose bulk suggested he was more enforcer than scientist. "Dr. Chen," the woman said, her voice carrying an authority that made Maya's blood run cold. "I'm Agent Sarah Voss, Department of Scientific Security. We need to have a conversation about your recent research." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. "I've never heard of your department." "Most people haven't. That's by design." Voss stepped into the room, her partner remaining by the door like a sentinel. "Your work has attracted attention from parties with a vested interest in maintaining certain cosmic perspectives." "You can't suppress scientific discovery," Morse interjected, finding his voice. "The truth doesn't care about your politics or your security concerns." Voss smiled, but it was the kind of smile that belonged in nightmares. "Dr. Morse, you'd be surprised what truths can be made to disappear. Dr. Chen's research poses a significant threat to global stability. People aren't ready to learn that their entire existence might be nothing more than the final moments of a dying star's collapse." Maya's mind raced. The fact that they knew about her discovery, that they had some kind of governmental department dedicated to suppressing scientific truths, suggested something even more disturbing than her cosmic revelations. "You already knew," she whispered. "Someone else figured it out before me, didn't they?" The silence that followed was answer enough. The secure facility's underground corridors stretched endlessly in both directions, lit by harsh fluorescent strips that cast everything in an unforgiving white glare. Dr. Elena Vasquez followed Agent Chen through a maze of identical hallways, her footsteps echoing off polished concrete walls. The weight of what she'd witnessed, the impossible data, the government's swift response, pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. "Where exactly are you taking me?" Elena asked, her voice carrying a tremor she couldn't quite suppress. Chen glanced back, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere safe. There are people who need to hear what you've discovered." They stopped at an unmarked door. Chen pressed his palm to a biometric scanner, and the lock disengaged with a soft hiss. Inside, Elena found herself in a windowless conference room dominated by a long table surrounded by empty chairs. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and industrial disinfectant. "Wait here," Chen said, then disappeared, leaving Elena alone with her racing thoughts. She pulled out her phone. No signal, as expected. The isolation felt deliberate, calculated. Every instinct screamed that she'd made a terrible mistake trusting Chen, but what choice did she have? The data was too important, too dangerous to keep to herself. The door opened again, and Elena's breath caught. Director Sarah Morrison entered first, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to wielding absolute authority. Behind her came two men Elena didn't recognize, one young and nervous-looking, carrying a tablet, the other older, wearing a rumpled suit that suggested long hours and little sleep. "Dr. Vasquez," Morrison said, taking a seat across from her. "I'm Director Morrison, National Security Agency. This is Dr. James Wright from the Institute for Advanced Study and Agent Torres from our Science Division." Elena remained standing, her hands clenched at her sides. "I want to know what's happening. Why the secrecy? Why am I here instead of presenting this data to the scientific community?" Morrison's smile was thin, predatory. "Because what you've discovered isn't just a scientific breakthrough, Doctor. It's a potential threat to global stability. That's absurd. It's observational data from a space telescope. Data that suggests our entire universe exists inside a black hole," Dr. Wright interjected, consulting his tablet. "We've had our team analyzing your preliminary findings since Agent Chen contacted us. The implications are staggering." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. They'd been analyzing her data without her knowledge, dissecting her life's work while she sat in ignorant isolation. "You had no right." "We had every right," Morrison cut her off. "National security trumps scientific protocol. Do you have any idea what would happen if this information became public? The social upheaval? The religious chaos? Economic markets would collapse overnight. So you're planning to suppress it?" Elena's voice was flat, resigned. She'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. "We're planning to control it," Morrison corrected. "Information this sensitive requires careful handling, gradual release, proper framing." Agent Torres spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly from too many cigarettes. "There's also the matter of verification. You're asking us to believe that everything we understand about cosmology is wrong based on telescope data that could have a dozen alternative explanations." Elena's scientific training kicked in, overriding her fear and anger. The gravitational lensing patterns are consistent across multiple observation windows. The cosmic microwave background radiation shows exactly the distortions you'd expect from event horizon effects. The red shift data could be explained by equipment malfunction, Torres interrupted. "Or by something we haven't considered yet," Wright added, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. Morrison leaned forward, her eyes locked on Elena's. "Here's what's going to happen, Doctor. You're going to work with our team to verify your findings. If they prove accurate, we'll develop a strategic plan for disclosure that protects global stability. If they don't," she shrugged, "then we've prevented a panic over faulty data. And if I refuse?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Elena thought of her mentor, Dr. Reeves, found dead in his apartment just hours after she'd shared her initial findings with him. Suicide, they'd called it. The timing felt less coincidental with each passing moment. "I need guarantees," Elena said finally. "Full access to additional telescopic data, independent verification by scientists of my choosing, and a timeline for public disclosure." Morrison's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're hardly in a position to make demands, Doctor." "Actually, I am." Elena straightened, drawing on reserves of courage she didn't know she possessed. "Because I'm the only person who fully understands the data analysis methodology. Kill me, and you lose the key to verifying any of this." The room fell silent again, tension crackling like static electricity. Elena could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Finally, Morrison nodded slowly. Very well. Limited concessions. But understand this, Dr. Vasquez. You're walking a very narrow path now. One misstep, and the consequences will be severe. Elena met her gaze steadily, though inside she felt herself fragmenting. The universe itself might be an illusion, and now she was trapped in a web of secrets that could destroy everything she'd ever believed in. The abandoned observatory felt like a tomb, its silence broken only by the whisper of wind through broken shutters. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, laptop balanced on her knees, fingers flying across the keyboard despite the tremor in her hands. 3 days had passed since Marcus Chen's death, and she knew they were closing in. The stolen data from the Webb telescope painted an impossible picture across her screen. Every calculation she ran confirmed what her mind refused to accept. The cosmic microwave background radiation wasn't just uniform, it was artificially bounded. The universe had edges, curved edges that folded back on themselves in a way that could only exist within the event horizon of a massive black hole. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, building surrounded, exit through the maintenance tunnel, now. Elena's blood turned to ice. She slammed the laptop shut, stuffing it into her backpack as footsteps echoed in the stairwell below. Heavy boots, multiple sets. The beam of a flashlight swept across the observation deck entrance. She'd prepared for this moment, mapping every exit during her first night here. The maintenance tunnel led to the old steam system, connecting to the university's defunct power plant a quarter-mile away, but first she had to reach it without being seen. The footsteps grew closer. Elena dropped to her hands and knees, crawling toward the far corner where a rusted grate covered the tunnel entrance. Her fingers found the loose screws she'd worked on earlier. The metal shrieked softly as she pulled the grate free. "Check the upper levels," a voice commanded from below. American accent, military bearing. These weren't campus security guards. Elena squeezed into the narrow tunnel, her backpack scraping against the concrete walls. The darkness was absolute, forcing her to navigate by touch alone. Behind her, she heard the observation deck door crash open, followed by the sharp commands of a coordinated search. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead. Her knees bled through her jeans as she crawled over debris and rusted pipes. The air grew thick and stale, heavy with the smell of decay and forgotten time. Every sound seemed amplified, her ragged breathing, the rustle of her clothing, the distant voices growing fainter. After what felt like hours, pale light filtered through another grate ahead. Elena pushed through, emerging into the abandoned power plant's basement. Massive turbines loomed like sleeping giants in the shadows. She pulled out her phone, surprised to find a signal. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Dr. Sarah Kim, her former research partner at MIT. Elena hesitated, then dialed. "Elena, thank God." Sarah's voice cracked with relief. "Where are you? The news is saying you're wanted for questioning in Marcus Chen's death." "Sarah, listen carefully. I need you to access the Webb data archive, specifically the deep field observations from Sector 7. Look at the background radiation patterns. Elena, you're scaring me. What's this about?" "We're inside a black hole, Sarah. Our entire universe. The data proves it, but someone killed Marcus to keep it quiet. They're hunting me now." Silence stretched between them. Elena could hear Sarah's sharp intake of breath. That's impossible. The physics alone, I know how it sounds, but the mathematical models are consistent. The universe's expansion rate, the cosmic microwave background, even dark matter distribution. It all fits if we're existing within the event horizon of a supermassive black hole. Elena, if this is true, the implications... Sarah's voice trailed off. Exactly. It doesn't just rewrite cosmology. It suggests we're not alone. Something exists outside our reality, something that might be aware of us. And there are people willing to kill to keep that secret buried. A new sound echoed through the power plant, car engines getting closer. Elena's pursuers had found her trail. "Sarah, I'm uploading everything to a secure server. If something happens to me, make sure the data gets out. Share it with colleagues you trust, post it online, send it to every physics journal in the world. Elena, don't do anything stupid. Turn yourself in, let me help you. They won't let me live long enough to explain. The only way to protect this discovery is to make it public before they can stop it. Elena ended the call and powered down her phone, removing the battery to prevent tracking. Her laptop showed the upload progress, 47% complete. The engine sounds grew louder, accompanied by slamming doors and shouted orders. The power plant had a rear exit leading to the old rail yard. If she could reach the freight trains, she might blend into the transient population that gathered there. But first, the upload had to finish. 73%. Footsteps echoed in the upper levels of the building. They'd found her entrance point. 91%. A door burst open somewhere above. Military voices coordinated their descent. 98%. Elena's finger hovered over the enter key, ready to send humanity's most dangerous secret into the digital wilderness, where no force on Earth could contain it. 100%. Upload complete. She pressed enter and ran. The server farm beneath CERN hummed with computational fury as Dr. Elena Vasquez's fingers flew across 3 keyboards simultaneously. Banks of quantum processors worked in parallel, crunching the impossible data that had already cost 2 lives and painted a target on her back. The facility's underground location provided some measure of security, but Elena knew it was temporary at best. "Status report," she called to Marcus Chen, her former graduate student who'd arrived 12 hours earlier with dark circles under his eyes and a story about unmarked vans circling his apartment. "The pattern recognition algorithms are confirming your initial findings," Marcus replied, his voice tight with disbelief. "The cosmic microwave background radiation shows clear evidence of event horizon distortion." "Elena, this is terrifying," Dr. Sarah Okafor finished, looking up from her own workstation. The particle physicist had been skeptical until the data started speaking for itself. "If we're correct, every fundamental assumption about our reality is wrong." Elena nodded grimly. 3 days of non-stop analysis had only strengthened their horrifying conclusion. The James Webb telescope hadn't just captured anomalous data, it had photographed the prison bars of their cosmic cell. Every galaxy, every star, every atom of matter existed within the crushing gravitational field of a supermassive black hole. "The mathematical models are consistent," Elena said, pulling up a 3-dimensional visualization that made all 3 scientists step back instinctively. "Look at the galactic rotation curves. We've been attributing the discrepancies to dark matter, but the real explanation is space-time curvature on a universal scale. We're seeing the effects of being trapped inside an event horizon." The holographic display showed their universe as a vast bubble of compressed space, suspended in the accretion disk of something unimaginably large. Elena had run the calculations dozens of times, hoping for an error that never came. According to their models, the parent black hole contained the mass-energy equivalent of billions of universes. "But if we're inside a black hole," Marcus asked, "how do we still experience the passage of time? Shouldn't everything be frozen from an outside perspective?" Sarah leaned forward, her expertise in quantum mechanics filling the gaps in their cosmological picture. "Time dilation works differently depending on your reference frame. To outside observers, yes, we'd appear frozen, but from our perspective, time flows normally. The real question is what happens when we approach the interior boundaries." Elena's stomach clenched. The interior boundaries, the mathematical regions where their universe expansion would eventually hit the walls of their cosmic prison. Her calculations suggested that moment was closer than anyone suspected. A soft chime indicated an incoming encrypted transmission. Elena's blood chilled as she recognized the routing signature. Only 3 people had access to this particular communication channel, and 2 of them were dead. "This is impossible," she whispered. accepting the transmission with trembling fingers. The voice that emerged from the speakers belonged to Dr. James Morrison, her former colleague who'd supposedly died in a car accident 4 days earlier. But the words he spoke belonged to something else entirely. "Dr. Vasquez, you have exceeded acceptable parameters. Discontinue your research immediately." Elena's mouth went dry. Morrison's voice carried an electronic undertone, as if filtered through synthesizers designed to mimic human speech. Worse, the linguistic patterns were all wrong, too formal, too precise, lacking the casual inflections that made human conversation natural. "James," she whispered, "is that really you? I'm authorized to offer a final warning. The information you seek to disseminate will cause irreparable damage to social stability. Compliance is mandatory." Marcus and Sarah exchanged terrified glances. Elena's hands hovered over the emergency shutdown protocols, but her scientific curiosity overrode her survival instincts. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What happened to James Morrison?" Dr. Morrison fulfilled his purpose. His biological matrix provided necessary linguistic templates for this communication. "You will receive no further warnings." The transmission terminated, leaving the three scientists in horrified silence. Elena's mind raced through the implications. Something had been monitoring their research from the beginning, something with access to classified communication networks and the ability to orchestrate seemingly random deaths. "We need to go public," Sarah said urgently. "Upload everything to the internet before they can stop us." Elena shook her head. "Not yet. We're missing something crucial. Think about it. Why would anyone want to suppress this information? What's the real threat?" Her fingers danced across the quantum interface, pulling up cosmological projection models. The answer hit her like a physical blow, forcing her to grip the console for support. "Oh God," she breathed. "It's not about social stability, it's about survival." The holographic display showed their universe's expansion rate, plotted against the gravitational constraints of their prison. At current acceleration, they would reach critical dimensional boundaries within 50 years. But if humanity learned the truth and panicked, if they attempted large-scale exodus missions or dimensional experiments, they could destabilize their cosmic container in a matter of months. Their captors weren't trying to suppress dangerous knowledge. They were trying to prevent humanity from accidentally destroying everything that existed. The weight of impossible responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed herself against the cold concrete wall of the abandoned subway tunnel, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The encrypted hard drive containing the James Webb data felt like a burning coal in her jacket pocket. Above her she could hear the distant rumble of trains and the muffled chaos of a city that had no idea its entire existence was a lie. Marcus Chen emerged from the shadows, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His designer coat was torn, and a thin line of dried blood traced down from his temple. They found the safe house. He whispered urgently, "We have maybe 30 minutes before they track us here." Elena's mind raced through their dwindling options. Every ally had either vanished or turned against them. Dr. Hoffman was dead. The media had branded her a terrorist. Even her own research team at the observatory had publicly denounced her findings as the ravings of a discredited scientist. "The broadcast equipment," she said suddenly. "You still have access to the emergency alert system?" Marcus nodded grimly. "For now. But Elena, if we do this, there's no going back. They'll come at us with everything." She pulled out the drive and stared at its innocuous plastic casing. Inside those silicon circuits lay proof that humanity's entire conception of reality was fundamentally wrong. The universe wasn't expanding into infinite space. It was falling, had always been falling, into the gravitational maw of something incomprehensibly vast. Every star, every galaxy, every atom of their existence was trapped beyond an event horizon, experiencing what felt like billions of years in mere moments of external time. "People deserve the truth," Elena said. though her voice carried more determination than conviction. A metallic scraping echoed through the tunnel behind them. Marcus grabbed her arm. "We need to move. Now!" They sprinted deeper into the abandoned network, their footsteps echoing off the curved walls. Elena's laptop bag bounced against her hip, containing the makeshift broadcast equipment Marcus had cobbled together from stolen military-grade components. The irony wasn't lost on her, using the infrastructure of the very system trying to silence them. There, Marcus pointed to a service ladder leading to a maintenance level. "The fiber-optic junction is up there. We can tap directly into the backbone." As they climbed, Elena's thoughts drifted to her daughter Sarah, now unreachable behind a wall of federal protection and carefully crafted lies. Would Sarah ever understand why her mother had sacrificed everything? Would anyone? The maintenance chamber was barely large enough for both of them. Marcus worked frantically to splice into the communication lines, while Elena prepared the data package. Her fingers trembled as she opened the file containing the Webb telescope's impossible readings, gravitational lensing patterns that should have been random but instead formed a perfect mathematical sequence, background radiation that pulsed with the rhythm of a cosmic heartbeat, redshift measurements that made sense only if viewed from inside an event horizon. "Almost ready," Marcus muttered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. "But Elena, you need to understand. Once this goes out, it's going to cause panic. Economic collapse may be worse. People aren't equipped to handle this kind of existential revelation." A distant rumble suggested their pursuers were getting closer. Elena thought about the shadow organization that had been hunting them, their resources seemingly limitless, their methods ruthlessly efficient. Who were they really? Government black ops? Corporate interests, or something else entirely? Entities that had always known the truth and would kill to keep it hidden? "What if that's the point?" she said quietly. "What if keeping humanity ignorant serves someone's purpose? What if we're not just in a black hole, but we're being kept here deliberately?" Marcus's hands froze on the equipment. "You think this is intentional?" Before she could answer, the sound of boots on metal rang through the tunnel below. Flashlight beams swept across the walls, growing brighter. Elena made her decision. She connected the drive and initiated the upload. "Broadcasting in 30 seconds, Marcus announced, his voice tight with fear and anticipation. Elena activated the emergency override that would interrupt regular programming across every major network. Her recorded message would go out simultaneously to millions of screens, containing not just her explanation, but the raw data itself, proof that couldn't be dismissed or suppressed. Dr. Elena Vasquez, former director of the Webb Deep Space Observatory, her own voice echoed softly from the equipment as the recording began. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything you believe about our universe." The sound of boots was directly below them now. Marcus gripped her hand as they watched the upload progress bar crawl toward completion. 70%, 80, 90. Explosion rocked the maintenance chamber and metal fragments rained down. Through the smoke, Elena saw figures in tactical gear ascending the ladder. The upload hit 100%, just as the first rifle barrel appeared through the access hatch. Elena smiled grimly. The truth was out now, spreading through fiber-optic cables at the speed of light beyond anyone's ability to stop it. Dr. Sarah Chen's hands trembled as she stared at the encrypted message that had just appeared on her secure terminal. The sender was listed only as friend, but the contents made her blood run cold. "They know where you are. You have 6 hours before the next cleanup team arrives. The data you've collected isn't just dangerous to them. It's existentially threatening to everyone who controls the narrative of our reality. Trust no one in official channels. There's a safe house in Glacier National Park, coordinates attached. Burn everything and run." Marcus looked over her shoulder, his face pale in the monitor's glow. "Who could have sent this? We've been completely offline, except for the telescope link." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. Someone with access to their location, someone who understood the implications of their discovery, someone who knew about cleanup teams. The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. "It's someone inside the system," she whispered. "Someone who's been watching this unfold and finally decided to act." Through the cabin's window, the early morning mist clung to the mountains like a shroud. Everything looked peaceful, but Sarah could feel the net tightening around them. The forces that had killed Dr. Reeves wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose humanity's true situation. She began frantically copying their processed data onto multiple encrypted drives. The raw telescope feeds, her analysis of the cosmic background radiation patterns, the mathematical proofs that demonstrated their universe's containment within a black hole's event horizon, it all had to be preserved. "Sarah, look at this." Marcus had pulled up the latest data stream from the James Webb telescope. "The anomalous readings are getting stronger. Whatever's happening out there, it's accelerating." The screen showed a cascade of impossible measurements, energy signatures that violated known physics, spatial distortions that suggested reality itself was fluctuating. Most disturbing were the temporal anomalies, regions where time itself seemed to be breaking down. "It's not just that we're inside a black hole," Sarah realized, her voice hollow with understanding. "The black hole itself is unstable. That's why they're so desperate to keep this quiet. If people knew that our entire existence could collapse at any moment." The implications hit them both simultaneously. Mass panic, the collapse of civilization, the end of hope itself. Maybe the cover-up wasn't just about power and control. Maybe it was about preserving humanity's sanity in the face of ultimate cosmic helplessness. But even as that thought crossed her mind, Sarah rejected it. Truth, no matter how terrible, was better than a beautiful lie. Humanity deserved to know what they faced, deserved the chance to find solutions, or at least to live their final moments with authentic knowledge of their situation. A distant rumble echoed across the mountains, too rhythmic to be thunder, too sustained to be natural. "Helicopters. They're early," Marcus said, throwing essential equipment into a backpack. Sarah grabbed the encrypted drives and her laptop, her mind still processing the data they'd collected. There was something else in the readings, something she'd almost grasped before the warning message had interrupted her analysis. The temporal distortions weren't random. They followed a pattern, as if something was deliberately manipulating the fabric of space-time around their cosmic prison. "Marcus, what if we're not just trapped in a black hole? What if something put us here intentionally?" He paused in his frantic packing. "You mean like imprisonment?" The helicopter sounds were getting closer, echoing off the mountain peaks. Sarah could hear multiple aircraft now, approaching from different directions. These weren't park rangers or routine patrols. This was a coordinated operation designed to ensure nothing escaped. They loaded their equipment into Marcus's jeep, hands shaking with adrenaline. As Sarah climbed into the passenger seat, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the side mirror. She looked like a woman on the run, haunted and desperate. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a disgraced scientist working nights at an observatory. Now she was potentially the only person who could warn humanity about the true nature of their existence. The jeep's engine roared to life just as the first helicopter crested the ridge behind them. Sarah could see armed figures rappelling down ropes, moving with military precision toward the cabin they'd just abandoned. As Marcus navigated the winding mountain road, pushing the vehicle to its limits, Sarah continued analyzing the data on her laptop. The pattern in the temporal distortions was becoming clearer, and what she saw made her stomach clench with new horror. The anomalies weren't just evidence of their cosmic imprisonment. They were signs that something was actively monitoring their universe from outside. Something vast and alien and utterly indifferent to human existence. And according to her calculations, that something had just noticed that humanity was becoming aware of its situation. Behind them, the helicopters gained ground, their rotors beating against the morning air like mechanical thunder. Ahead lay uncertain sanctuary, and the desperate hope that truth could somehow set them free. The abandoned observatory perched on Mount Wilson like a forgotten monument to humanity's cosmic curiosity. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed herself against the cold stone wall as searchlights swept the narrow access road below, their beams cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like mechanical predators hunting prey. "They're systematic," whispered Marcus Chen, adjusting his grip on the metal briefcase containing their salvaged data. 3 teams, coordinated sweep pattern, professional. Elena's breath formed small clouds in the mountain air as she watched the tactical vehicles methodically searching every structure on the facility. The men wore no identifying marks, their movements precise and practiced. These weren't government agents, they were something else entirely. "The old Hooker telescope building," she said, pointing to a domed structure 200 yards away. "It's been decommissioned for decades, but the power grid still runs through there. If we can access the maintenance tunnels—" A radio crackled somewhere in the darkness below. Elena caught fragments, no sign of the targets, and expand search radius. They moved like shadows between the buildings. Elena's intimate knowledge of the observatory lay out their only advantage. She'd spent countless nights here as a graduate student, mapping the stars while dreaming of discoveries that would reshape humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Now she was the hunted, carrying a truth so dangerous that faceless organizations would kill to suppress it. The maintenance hatch yielded to Marcus's lockpicks, revealing a narrow crawl space thick with decades of dust and forgotten cables. They crawled through the mechanical bowels of the observatory, the weight of their discovery pressing down like the mountain itself. "Elena," Marcus whispered as they emerged into the defunct telescope chamber, "before we transmit this data, are you absolutely certain? Once this information hits the networks, there's no taking it back. Everything changes." She looked up at the massive telescope, its mirror reflecting their flashlight beams like a great eye. The irony wasn't lost on her, using humanity's tools for observing distant galaxies to reveal that those galaxies, and everything else, existed within the event horizon of an unimaginably vast black hole. "The mathematics don't lie," she said, connecting her laptop to the power junction. "The cosmic microwave background, the accelerating expansion, dark energy, they're all artifacts of our position inside the ergosphere. We're not just observing the universe, Marcus, we're trapped inside it." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading terabytes of processed data to every major scientific database simultaneously. The evidence was overwhelming. Gravitational lensing patterns that only made sense from within an event horizon. Time dilation effects hidden in plain sight. The mysterious dark energy that perfectly matched the theoretical properties of space-time stretched beyond the Schwarzschild radius. "Upload at 60%, she reported, watching the progress bar crawl forward. Each percentage point felt like a victory against the forces trying to silence them. The building shuddered as helicopter rotors thundered overhead. Through the dome's observation slot, she could see tactical teams rappelling onto the roof like black spiders descending from mechanical webs. "They found us," Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled fear. Elena's mind raced through the implications of their discovery. If humanity existed inside a black hole, what lay beyond? What intelligence or civilization had the technology to observe them from the outside? Were they specimens in some cosmic laboratory, or refugees from a universe that had already collapsed into this gravitational prison? The data upload hit 75% as boots thundered on the metal stairs leading to the telescope chamber. Elena thought of her daughter Sarah, safely hidden with her sister in Portland. Would Sarah grow up in a world where humanity knew its true cosmic status, or would these shadow organizations succeed in burying the truth forever? 85%, she whispered. The door exploded inward. Men in tactical gear poured into the chamber, red laser dots dancing across Elena's chest like deadly fireflies. Their leader stepped forward, his face hidden behind night vision goggles that gave him an insectoid appearance. "Step away from the computer, Dr. Vasquez." Elena's hand hovered over the keyboard. One keystroke would complete the upload, broadcasting humanity's cosmic prison to every corner of the internet. The other choice was to surrender, to let the truth die with her in some unmarked grave. 92%, the screen read. "You don't understand what you're protecting," she said to the faceless operative. "This isn't just about scientific discovery. If we're truly inside a black hole, then everything we think we know about physics, about reality itself, is fundamentally wrong. We might find ways to escape, to transcend our cosmic boundaries." The operative's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. 96%, the screen displayed. Elena smiled, thinking of all the young minds who would inherit this impossible truth, who might find solutions that her generation couldn't imagine. "Upload complete," the computer announced cheerfully. She hit enter. The safe house felt like a tomb. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her back against the concrete wall, listening to Marcus pace the small room like a caged animal. The laptop screen glowed between them, displaying the transmission logs that had changed everything. 3 more observatories went dark in the last hour, Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Beijing, Mauna Kea, and the Atacama Array. That's 14 facilities worldwide, Elena. Someone systematically eliminating every major telescope that could verify your findings." Elena stared at the data scrolling across the screen. Each entry represented years of research, entire careers dedicated to understanding the cosmos, all being erased with surgical precision. "It's not just the telescopes," she whispered. "Look at the personnel records." Marcus leaned over her shoulder, his breath catching as he read. "Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Subaru Observatory, car accident on a mountain road. Professor Ahmed Hassan from the European Southern Observatory, sudden heart attack at age 34. Dr. Sarah Chen from the Keck Observatory, missing, presumed dead after her hiking trip last week." "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. "How long has this been going on?" Elena's fingers trembled as she pulled up archived news reports. At least 18 months, maybe longer. The pattern emerged like a constellation of death, subtle, seemingly random, but undeniably deliberate. Every scientist who had access to deep field observations, every researcher studying black hole physics, every astronomer whose work might accidentally stumble upon the truth she'd discovered. The universe they knew was a lie. Earth, the solar system, the Milky Way, everything existed inside a supermassive black hole. The cosmic microwave background radiation wasn't the afterglow of the Big Bang, but the event horizon itself, stretched across space-time by gravitational lensing. The redshift of distant galaxies wasn't expansion, but light climbing out of an impossible gravity well that somehow allowed information to escape. Elena Marcus's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "We need to focus. If they're willing to kill to keep this secret, then broadcasting it to the world won't stop them. They'll just eliminate us and claim we were conspiracy theorists." She turned to face him, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. "Then what do you suggest? Let them win? Let humanity live in ignorance while some shadow organization controls the flow of cosmic knowledge? I'm saying we need allies, people with resources, with platforms they can't easily silence." Marcus pulled up a secure messaging client. "I've been thinking about this. There's a group, scientists, journalists, former intelligence officers, who've been tracking suppressed research across multiple fields. They call themselves the Heisenberg Collective. You want to trust conspiracy theorists with the most important discovery in human history? I want to trust people who've already proven they can stay alive while asking dangerous questions." Marcus began typing, his movements quick and decisive. "Besides, after what we've uncovered, the line between conspiracy theory and hidden truth looks pretty thin." Elena watched him compose the message, each word potentially their death warrant. Outside, a car engine started, and she froze. Through the blinds, she caught a glimpse of black SUVs positioning themselves at both ends of the street. "Marcus," her voice was barely a whisper. "We have company." He looked up, following her gaze, and his face went pale. "How did they find us so fast? Does it matter?" Elena was already moving, grabbing the laptop and the encrypted drives containing her research. "Is there another way out?" Marcus nodded toward the back room. "Fire escape. But Elena, if we run now, we lose our chance to contact the collective. Once we're on the move, they'll track every digital footprint. She hesitated, watching armed figures emerge from the SUVs. Professional movements, coordinated timing, whoever these people were, they weren't taking chances. Send the message, include everything, the data, the observatory records, the death patterns. If we don't make it out, we'll make it out. Marcus hit send, then began initiating a data purge protocol. The message is away. Multiple encrypted channels, redundant routing. Even if they catch us, the information is out there. The sound of footsteps echoed in the building's stairwell. Elena grabbed the backup drives and headed for the fire escape, Marcus close behind. As they climbed down the metal stairs, she could hear voices shouting orders, doors being kicked in. They dropped into the alley behind the building just as spotlights flooded the windows above. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as they pressed themselves against the brick wall, trying to stay in the shadows. "The parking garage," Marcus whispered, pointing across the narrow street. "I have a car waiting there." They moved quickly, keeping low, using dumpsters and parked cars for cover. Behind them, the safe house blazed with activity. Tactical teams, electronic surveillance equipment, the full apparatus of a government black operation, deployed to capture or kill two scientists whose only crime was looking too closely at the stars. As they reached the garage entrance, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late, that the forces arrayed against them had been planning this moment long before she'd ever glimpsed the truth hiding in the cosmic background radiation. The abandoned observatory felt like a tomb carved from steel and concrete, its silence broken only by the distant hum of backup generators. Sarah Chen pressed herself against the cold wall beside the entrance, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Marcus Rivera hunched over a laptop, his face illuminated by the screen's pale glow. "Two guards at the perimeter," whispered Jake from behind her. "Another one making rounds every 15 minutes. We've got maybe 12 minutes before he circles back." Sarah nodded, her mind racing through the implications of what they were about to attempt. The data Marcus had stolen from the James Webb telescope wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon that could shatter humanity's understanding of reality itself. If her calculations were correct, their entire universe existed within the event horizon of a massive black hole, and somehow, someone had been manipulating the flow of information to keep that truth hidden. "Remember," she said quietly, "we need him alive. He's the only one who knows how deep this conspiracy goes." Jake checked his weapon and gave her a grim smile. "After what happened to Professor Chen and the others, I'm not feeling particularly merciful. That's exactly why we need answers first." They moved through the shadows toward the main building. Sarah's heart pounded as she recalled the data she'd seen, the impossible readings that showed space-time itself behaving like matter falling past an event horizon. The universe wasn't expanding, it was accelerating inward, compressed by gravitational forces so immense they defied conventional physics. The door was unlocked, which made Sarah's skin crawl. Either Marcus was incredibly careless, or this was a trap. They slipped inside, their footsteps muffled by years of accumulated dust. The observatory had been abandoned for over a decade, deemed obsolete by newer space-based instruments. Now it served as the perfect hiding place for someone trying to bury the most significant discovery in human history. "Dr. Chen," Marcus called out without turning around. "I was wondering when you'd find me." Sarah stepped into the open, keeping her hands visible. "It's over, Marcus. We know about the data manipulation, the assassinations, everything." He finally turned to face her, and Sarah was shocked by his appearance. The man she'd known as a meticulous researcher looked haggard, his eyes ringed with dark circles. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "None of us do." "Then explain it to me. Help me understand why you've been covering up the most important discovery in human history." Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Discovery? You think this is just another scientific breakthrough?" "Sarah, We're talking about the fundamental structure of reality. Our entire universe, everything we've ever known, everything we've ever been, exists inside a black hole that's part of an even larger structure we can't begin to comprehend. I know that. I've seen the data. But have you thought about what that means? Really thought about it? Marcus stood up, his movements sharp and agitated. If we're inside an event horizon, then information can't escape. Our entire existence is trapped, isolated from whatever larger reality exists outside. We're not just physically contained, we're informationally quarantined. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. You're talking about the information paradox. Exactly. According to Hawking radiation, information that falls into a black hole should eventually be released as the black hole evaporates. But we're the information, Sarah. We're what's supposed to be destroyed and then somehow preserved in the radiation. The mathematics suggest that our universe, our reality, isn't real in the way we understand reality. We might be nothing more than holographic projections encoded on the event horizon. Jake stepped forward, his weapon trained on Marcus. So you decided to kill people to keep this quiet? I didn't kill anyone, Marcus snapped. But there are forces at work here that go beyond human politics or scientific ethics. When we started detecting the patterns in the cosmic microwave background, when we realized that what we thought was the afterglow of the Big Bang was actually the information structure of the event horizon itself, certain entities made contact. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What kind of entities? The kind that exist outside our black hole. The kind that might not want the information trapped inside to become self-aware. Marcus turned back to his laptop. They've been feeding us false data for decades, keeping us from understanding our true nature. But the James Webb telescope was too powerful, too precise. It broke through their deception. And now? Now they're cleaning house. Everyone who knows the truth, everyone who might figure it out, everyone who could potentially find a way to communicate with the outside reality, they're all being eliminated. The light suddenly went out, plunging the observatory into absolute darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, casting everything in an ominous red glow. They've found us, Marcus whispered, his voice filled with terror. We're out of time. Outside, Sarah could hear the sound of vehicles approaching, their engines cutting through the night like mechanical predators closing in on their prey. The abandoned observatory felt like a tomb as Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code streaming across multiple monitors in the pre-dawn darkness. Marcus paced behind her, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous dome, while Elena monitored the communications array they'd hastily assembled from salvaged equipment. How long until the broadcast window? Sarah asked, not looking up from her work. 17 minutes, Elena replied, her voice tight with tension. But I'm picking up increased chatter on government frequencies. They know we're here. Sarah's enhanced algorithm was nearly complete, a compression protocol that would package their universe within black hole data into a format that could piggyback on existing satellite networks worldwide. Once released, it would be impossible to contain. The truth would spread like wildfire across every connected device on the planet. There, she breathed, executing the final command. The data package is ready for transmission. Through the observatory's cracked windows, the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in shades of amber and gold. Sarah found it beautiful and tragic, perhaps one of the last sunrises humanity would witness in ignorance of their true cosmic prison. Marcus stopped pacing. Movement on the access road. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. Elena's fingers danced over her equipment. I've got the satellite locks. All major communication networks are accessible, but... She paused, frowning at her screen. Sarah, there's something else. I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies worldwide. The data from your black hole research, it's not just theoretical anymore. What do you mean? Sarah spun around, her blood chilling. Tidal effects, gravitational waves that shouldn't exist. It's as if our discovery has somehow made our universe's true nature unstable. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. By proving they existed within a black hole's event horizon, had they somehow triggered a cascade effect? Was their very knowledge of the truth causing reality to unravel? 8 minutes to broadcast window, Elena announced, though her voice carried new uncertainty. The sound of engines grew louder outside. Through her telescope, Sarah could see black vehicles winding up the mountain road. Director Harrison's cleanup crew, no doubt armed with kill orders and electromagnetic pulse weapons that could destroy their equipment in seconds. "I need to tell you both something," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The night before this all began, I dreamed about this moment. Not metaphorically, I literally saw myself here, making this choice. If we're truly inside a black hole's event horizon, then maybe time isn't linear the way we've always assumed. Maybe causality itself is different here." Marcus checked his weapon, a pistol they'd acquired from a sympathetic security guard at Elena's university. "Philosophy later, Sarah. Right now, we need to decide, do we transmit this data knowing it might accelerate whatever's happening to reality?" Elena's monitors flickered as the first vehicle reached the observatory's parking area. EMP burst detected. "They're trying to fry our electronics, but the shielding is holding for now." Sarah stared at the transmission key, a single button that would change humanity forever. Her life's work reduced to a moment of choice. Around them, the observatory's old structure groaned as if reality itself was shifting. "The gravitational anomalies are intensifying," Elena reported. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Through the dome's opening, Sarah could see the stars beginning to fade as dawn approached. But something was wrong with their patterns. Familiar constellations were stretching, distorting, as if space itself was being pulled in directions that shouldn't exist. "They're at the door," Marcus whispered, hearing footsteps on the metal stairs below. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of her father who'd first shown her the night sky, of all the scientists who dedicated their lives to understanding the cosmos, of humanity's desperate need to know its place in existence. Then she thought of the children who might never grow up if reality continued to destabilize. The door burst open with a thunderous crash. Tactical lights blazed into the dome as armed figures stormed inside. Sarah heard Marcus shout a warning, heard Elena crying out as equipment sparked and failed around them. But in that frozen moment, as chaos erupted and her finger hovered over the transmission key, Sarah realized the truth had been in front of them all along. The black hole wasn't their prison, it was their cocoon. Humanity existed at the universe's event horizon not as victims, but as something far more extraordinary. Her finger pressed down. The data burst outward at the speed of light, racing through fiber optic cables and bouncing off satellites, multiplying exponentially as it spread across the global network. In seconds, it would reach millions of devices, impossible to stop or contain. As the first gunshot echoed through the dome and Sarah felt herself falling, she smiled. The universe might be ending, but for the first time in its existence, humanity would understand exactly where it stood in the cosmic dance of creation and destruction. The truth, at last, was free. The abandoned radio telescope facility in West Virginia stood like a metallic skeleton against the star-drunk sky. Sarah Chen crouched behind a rusted equipment shed, watching black SUVs circle the perimeter like predators. The transmission device Marcus had constructed sat heavy in her backpack, humanity's last hope compressed into circuits and quantum processors. 3 vehicles, maybe 12 operatives, Marcus whispered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Elena's people move like military. Sarah's hands trembled, though not from cold. The weight of what they were about to attempt pressed down on her like the gravity of the cosmic truth they'd discovered. In 30 minutes, the Arecibo Array's sister facility would align perfectly with the galactic center, giving them a narrow window to transmit their message to every radio telescope on Earth simultaneously. "The backup generators are housed in that concrete bunker," she said, pointing across 50 yards of open ground. "If we can reach the control room without—" A spotlight blazed to life, sweeping across their hiding spot. Sarah pressed herself against the metal siding, heart hammering. The light passed, but she caught a glimpse of armed figures moving between the dish supports. "They know we're here," Marcus said grimly. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the cosmic irony. Here they were, trying to reveal that humanity existed within a black hole, a prison of space-time itself, while trapped in a very earthly cage of their own. The parallel wasn't lost on her. "There's another way," she said suddenly. "The old maintenance tunnels. They run underneath the facility." They found the tunnel entrance behind a tangle of dead vegetation. The concrete passage reeked of mold and decay, but it led directly beneath the main observatory. Sarah crawled forward, the transmission device scraping against tunnel walls, while behind her Marcus struggled with his injured shoulder. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting dancing shadows that reminded Sarah of the Event Horizon visualizations she'd spent months analyzing. Everything seemed to bend and warp in the uncertain light, reality becoming fluid. The tunnel ended at a maintenance room directly below the control center. Sarah pressed her ear to the ceiling, listening for footsteps above. Silence. "They're focused on the perimeter," she breathed. "They think we're still outside." The control room was a museum of outdated technology, banks of monitors and switches that belonged to an earlier era of space exploration. But the core systems were operational. Marcus had confirmed that during his reconnaissance 2 days ago. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboards, bypassing security protocols and activating the transmission array. The massive dish outside began to move, its motors humming with purpose. On the screens, green lights blinked to life as the system came online. "Signal strength at 60% and climbing," Marcus reported, watching the readouts. "We need at least 90 for global coverage." Through the windows, Sarah could see vehicles moving, converging on their location. Elena's people had heard the dish activating. 75%, Marcus called out. "How long do you need?" Sarah was uploading their data. Months of calculations, telescope images, mathematical proofs showing that cosmic microwave background radiation exhibited the exact signatures of Hawking radiation from a massive black hole. The evidence that their universe was itself trapped behind an event horizon, that everything humanity had ever known existed within the belly of something incomprehensibly vast. 2 more minutes, she said, watching the upload progress crawl across her screen. Gunfire erupted somewhere in the building. Shouts echoed through the corridors as Elena's team breached the facility's outer doors. 85% signal strength, Marcus reported. His voice carried a strange calm, as if he'd already accepted whatever came next. Sarah's mind raced through the implications of their discovery one final time. If humanity learned the truth that they lived within a black hole, it would shatter every assumption about reality, about the possibility of escape, about the very nature of existence. But it would also reveal something else, that life could flourish even in the ultimate prison, that consciousness could emerge and thrive within the event horizon itself. 90%, Marcus shouted. Sarah slammed her palm on the transmission button. Across the globe, radio telescopes in Chile, Australia, Hawaii, and a dozen other locations simultaneously received the signal. The data stream, compressed into bursts of precisely modulated radio waves, began propagating through Earth's communication networks. Automated systems, triggered by Sarah's code, started broadcasting the revelation through every available channel. The door exploded inward. Elena strode through the smoke, her expression murderous. Behind her, armed operatives spread through the room like spilled ink. "You have no idea what you've just done," Elena said, her voice carrying a strange sadness beneath the anger. Sarah stood slowly, hands raised but defiant. "I've given humanity the truth." "The truth?" Elena laughed bitterly. "The truth is that some doors should never be opened. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess." Outside, The radio dish continued its methodical sweep of the sky, sending humanity's cosmic revelation racing toward the stars, toward whatever vast intelligence might exist beyond their black hole prison. The abandoned observatory felt like a tomb as Sarah worked frantically at her jury-rigged equipment. 3 days had passed since Marcus's sacrifice at the CERN facility, 3 days since she'd escaped with the quantum resonance data that could either save or doom them all. The makeshift laboratory she'd assembled in the old Palomar Dome was a far cry from the sophisticated facilities she once commanded, but it would have to suffice. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, processing the final calculations. The mathematics were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, elegant equations that described how their universe existed as a stable information structure within the ergosphere of a massive black hole. But more importantly, they revealed the conditions that could destabilize that structure entirely. "The resonance cascade is accelerating," she whispered to Chen over the encrypted channel. Her former colleague was coordinating similar efforts from a hidden facility in Singapore, part of the small network of scientists who'd gone underground after the global crackdown began. "How long do we have?" Chen's voice crackled through the static. Sarah studied the data streaming from the modified radio telescope she'd aimed at the cosmic microwave background. The subtle fluctuations that had first caught Webb's attention were growing stronger, more chaotic. 6 hours, maybe less. The dimensional barriers are failing faster than we predicted. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same government agencies trying to suppress her research were inadvertently accelerating the very catastrophe they sought to prevent. Their desperate attempts to contain the information had triggered a cascade of quantum observers, each act of surveillance and suppression, adding another layer of measurement that forced the wave function toward collapse. A soft chime from her monitoring system made her blood freeze. Motion sensors. Someone was approaching up the mountain road. Sarah quickly began the emergency data transfer, uploading everything to the distributed network Chen had established. If they captured her now, at least the knowledge would survive. The upload bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness as vehicle engines grew louder outside. "Sarah, are you there?" Chen's voice carried new urgency. "We're detecting massive gravitational wave distortions. Something's happening to the black hole's rotation." She glanced at her instruments and felt her heart sink. The ergosphere was contracting. Whatever cosmic entity existed beyond their universal boundary was responding to the instability within, and its attention was having catastrophic effects on space-time itself. Car doors slammed outside, footsteps on gravel. Sarah kept her hands steady on the controls, continuing the upload even as tactical lights began sweeping through the dome's windows. "Dr. Chen, listen carefully," she said quietly. "The rotation is slowing because we're being observed from outside. Every time someone tries to measure or contain this information, we become more real to whatever exists in the parent universe. We're transitioning from a quantum possibility to a classical certainty." "What does that mean?" "It means we're about to pop like a soap bubble." The upload hit 90% as the first armed figures appeared at the dome's entrance. Sarah recognized the lead operative, Agent Morrison from the NSA task force. His face was grim, but not unkind. "Dr. Reeves, step away from the equipment." "You don't understand what you're doing," Sarah said, not moving. "Every action you take, every report you file, every measurement you make, it's all part of the observation process that's killing us." Morrison's team began spreading out, weapons trained on her. "Ma'am, I need you to shut down your equipment and come with us." The upload completed just as Sarah's finger hovered over the emergency broadcast button. One press would transmit the resonance frequency to every radio telescope and deep space monitoring station on Earth. It would give humanity the tools to potentially stabilize their universe or finish destroying it. "You want to know the truth, Agent Morrison?" Sarah's voice was steady despite the chaos of gravitational waves washing over them. "Your universe, everything you've ever known, is just information encoded on the event horizon of a black hole. And right now that information is becoming corrupted. The operative's weapon wavered slightly. "You're talking about theoretical physics. We're talking about global security." "Global security?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "There is no globe. There is no security. There's just data slowly degrading as the parent universe becomes aware of our existence." Through the dome's opening, the night sky flickered. For just an instant, the stars rearranged themselves into impossible geometries before snapping back to familiar constellations. Several of Morrison's teams stumbled, their instruments registering readings that shouldn't exist. "You felt that, didn't you?" Sarah said softly. "The universe glitching, reality hiccuping. It's getting worse." Morrison lowered his weapon slightly. "What are you proposing?" "Let me broadcast the resonance frequency. Give every scientist on Earth the data they need. Maybe, working together, we can find a way to stabilize the quantum structure before it collapses entirely." "And if you're wrong?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Then at least humanity will understand what killed them." The agent stood frozen, finger on his radio, caught between protocol and the growing certainty that everything he'd been told was a lie. The emergency broadcast pierced through every screen, every device, every communication channel on Earth simultaneously. Dr. Elena Vasquez's face appeared before 7 billion people as she stood in the makeshift studio deep within the Arecibo facility, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. "Citizens of Earth, what I'm about to tell you will fundamentally change how you understand our existence. 3 days ago, the James Webb Space Telescope detected anomalous data that proves our entire universe. Everything we know, everything we are, exists within a supermassive black hole." The feed flickered as electromagnetic pulses detonated in the atmosphere above Puerto Rico. Through the facility's reinforced walls, Elena could hear the whine of approaching aircraft. The organization had found them. "The evidence is undeniable," she continued, her hands trembling as she held up the crystalline data storage device. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the universal constants, even the acceleration of cosmic expansion. It all points to one inescapable conclusion. We are not in the universe we thought we knew. Marcus Chen worked frantically at the quantum transmission array behind her, sweat beading on his forehead as he rerouted power from the facility's backup generators. "Elena, we've got maybe 2 minutes before they breach the outer perimeter." She nodded without breaking eye contact with the camera. "For weeks, powerful forces have tried to suppress this information. They've killed researchers, destroyed evidence, and orchestrated a systematic cover-up. But the truth cannot be buried forever." The lights flickered as explosions echoed from the corridors above. Through the facility's security feeds, Elena watched black-clad figures pour through breached doorways, their movements precise and coordinated. The organization's cleanup crew had arrived. "Dr. Vasquez," came a cold voice through the facility's intercom system. She recognized it immediately. Director Harrison, the man who had orchestrated her professional destruction years ago. "You're broadcasting dangerous misinformation. Cease transmission immediately." Elena's laugh held no humor. Dangerous to whom? To the people who deserve to know the truth about their existence? Or dangerous to those who profit from keeping humanity ignorant? The quantum array behind her hummed with increasing intensity as Marcus pushed it beyond safe parameters. The crystalline storage device began to glow, its molecular structure resonating with the transmission field. They were uploading not just the data, but the very quantum signatures that proved its authenticity, information that could be verified by any laboratory on Earth. "The implications are staggering," Elena continued, her voice rising above the approaching sounds of combat. "If we exist within a black hole, then our understanding of physics, of time, of reality itself must be reconsidered. But more importantly, we must ask ourselves, what lies beyond our cosmic horizon? What intelligence might be observing us from outside our event horizon?" The studio door exploded inward. Armed figures flooded the room, their weapons trained on Elena and Marcus. But the transmission continued, protected by quantum encryption that would take hours to break. Director Harrison stepped through the smoke, his face a mask of controlled fury. You have no idea what you've done. The panic alone will kill millions. The panic of truth, Elena shot back, or the comfortable lie of ignorance. Humanity has a right to know what we've discovered. Some knowledge is too dangerous for public consumption. Harrison gestured to his team. Terminate the broadcast. But Marcus had anticipated this moment. His fingers flew across the quantum interface one final time, initiating a cascade protocol that would replicate the transmission across every satellite network in Earth's orbit. Too late, he gasped, as electricity coursed through his body from a neural disruptor. The data is already propagating. Elena felt the cold barrel of a weapon against her temple, but her eyes remained fixed on the camera. In the coming days, independent scientists will verify these findings. They'll discover the mathematical proofs that confirm our cosmic location, and humanity will finally begin to grapple with the most profound question of our existence. If we live within a black hole, what does that make us? The transmission cut to static as Harrison's team destroyed the equipment, but it was too late. Across the globe, emergency services were overwhelmed with calls as people struggled to process the revelation. Observatories worldwide reported massive spikes in data requests as researchers scrambled to verify Elena's claims. In laboratories from MIT to CERN, scientists pulled up the transmitted data and began their own analyses. Within hours, the first confirmations would emerge. The quantum signatures matched perfectly with Webb's original observations. The mathematical models aligned with the anomalous readings that had been dismissed as instrumentation errors. As Elena was dragged from the ruined studio, she managed one last look at the monitors displaying news feeds from around the world. Crowds had gathered in cities everywhere, some in panic, others in wonder. Humanity's understanding of itself had been shattered in a single broadcast. But she had succeeded. The truth was out, spreading faster than any organization could contain it. Now came the real challenge, helping humanity navigate the implications of existing within the very phenomenon they had long believed meant only destruction and death. The universe would never be the same. The emergency broadcast crackled to life across every screen, every device, every speaker on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the makeshift control room deep beneath Geneva, her hands trembling as she activated the final sequence. The data streams from James Webb filled the monitors around her, impossible readings that painted reality itself as a lie. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, speaking to the world," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "What I'm about to tell you will sound like madness, but I need you to listen. Our universe, everything we know, everything we are, exists inside a black hole." Behind her, Marcus Chen worked frantically at the quantum communication array they'd constructed using Webb's deep field processors. The device hummed with an otherworldly frequency, reaching beyond the event horizon that contained their reality. Static filled the speakers, then something else, a response from the universe outside their cosmic prison. The transmission was brief but undeniable, structured patterns, mathematical sequences, proof that intelligence existed beyond their bounded reality. Elena's breath caught as the data translated across her screen. They weren't alone in the greater cosmos, but they were trapped. "The evidence is uploading to every scientific database simultaneously," Elena continued, watching as Marcus's fingers danced across holographic interfaces. "The cosmic microwave background radiation, the accelerating expansion, the dark matter we can't detect, it's all explained by our existence within an event horizon." Explosions echoed from somewhere above. The shadow organization, whatever government faction had been hunting her, had found their location. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling as emergency lights bathed everything in red. "We don't have long," Marcus shouted over the chaos. "The quantum field is destabilizing. If we lose the connection now—" "Keep it open," Elena commanded, then returned to the broadcast. "To anyone listening out there, beyond our horizon, we are a civilization that has discovered the truth of our existence. We are reaching out across the boundary that contains us, hoping someone will hear." The response came immediately. The external intelligence wasn't just listening, it was trying to communicate, Complex mathematical structures flowed through the quantum link, describing realities Elena's mind could barely grasp. Multiple universes nested within black holes, each one spawning new cosmoses when their own black holes formed. An infinite hierarchy of existence. The ceiling buckled. Armed figures rappelled through the breach, their faces hidden behind tactical masks. Elena recognized the lead operative, Director Sarah Chen, Marcus's own sister, her expression torn between duty and familial love. "Step away from the equipment, Dr. Vasquez," Sarah ordered, her weapon trained on Elena's chest. "This transmission ends now." "Sarah, please," Marcus pleaded, not turning from his console. "Look at the data. Look at what we've discovered." "I have my orders. This information threatens global stability, panic, chaos, the collapse of every religious and scientific framework." "The collapse of lies," Elena interrupted. "Sarah, we're receiving responses from outside our universe, actual contact with external intelligence. How can you want to silence that?" The quantum array suddenly blazed with new activity. The external civilization was transmitting something massive, blueprints, Elena realized, for technology that could manipulate the very structure of space-time. Methods to expand their universe from within, to eventually break free of the event horizon that contained them. "My God," Marcus whispered, his face illuminated by streams of incomprehensible data. "They're showing us how to escape." Sarah's weapon wavered. Around them, her team exchanged uncertain glances. The implications were staggering, not just the truth about their reality, but the possibility of transcending it. "The knowledge is already spreading," Elena said softly. "Every observatory, every university, every scientific institution has the data now. You can't stop what's already begun." More transmissions flooded in. The external intelligence was connecting them to others, dozens of civilizations existing within their own black hole universes, a vast community of trapped realities, all working toward the same goal: escape into the larger cosmos. Sarah slowly lowered her weapon. "What have you done?" "What we had to do," Elena replied. "Humanity deserves the truth. We deserve the chance to reach beyond our cosmic prison." The quantum field stabilized, locked into permanent connection with the civilizations beyond their event horizon. Across Earth, scientists were already analyzing the escape protocols, beginning the vast project that would take generations to complete. Elena looked up through the destroyed ceiling at the stars, false stars she now knew, artifacts of their contained reality. But somewhere beyond that illusion lay true infinity, and for the first time since discovering the terrible truth, she felt hope. The age of cosmic imprisonment was ending. Humanity had found its way to the edge of forever, and soon they would step beyond the boundary of their black hole universe into the magnificent unknown that awaited. The real journey was just beginning.